Welcome, everyone, to Conversations with Nick and
Alina.
And we are so excited to be with you today. We are going to be talking about marriage and three steps, three ways to make sure that your marriage, whether you're married now or want to get married in the future, is hot and steamy.
Hot and steamy.
And when we wanted to talk about hot and steamy marriages, there was one couple that immediately came to mind.
And they weren't available.
So here we are.
That's amazing. This is Bobby and Katie McDonough. Welcome, Bobby and Katie.
Thank you for being with us.
Bobby and Katie are great friends of ours. We've been friends for, maybe, 4 or 5 years now? Something like that. And Bobby is actually also the guitar player in our band. So
Yes.
if you have listened to or do in the future the Vision CD, Bobby is all over it. It's really, it should have been more appropriately titled Vision by Bobby McDonough, because really, I mean, when you listen to Vision, you listen to it to listen to Bobby's guitar parts, because it's pretty extraordinary.
Thank you.
They are. Oh, Katie, words of affirmation. There it is. Before we get into the topic of the day and learn more about the two of you as well, I just wanted to say, if you're unfamiliar with Conversations with Nick and Alina, we talk about Christian life, Christian questions, or even non-faith related questions. We are always honest, sometimes messy, but you will always see exactly the truth from us, and this is just a really important tenet for us in this show. And then also, I recently was listening to I listen to a lot of different podcasts, and I realized something. I have done a criminal disservice to our patron community. So I noticed in a lot of different podcasts that when they get a new patron at any point throughout the week, like, they will announce and thank that patron in the next episode. And in the time that we've been doing this show and putting out music and all this different stuff, we have never acknowledged in a formal way our patrons by name. So I want to start doing that from here on out. Whenever we get new patrons for the ministry that we're doing, I want to acknowledge them publicly and thank them for being a part of it. So because at this point we've gone this long not doing it, the initial list is a little long, but here we go. Thank you so dearly and lovingly. We appreciate you, Lynette Bryant, Jonathan Moody, Todd Kaminsky, Kathleen Remenerick, Rita Drost, Julie Boyle, Alyssa Tipping, Gladys O'Hollerans, Corey Mack, Samantha Byrne, John Wood, that's Dr. John Wood, Hernan Garcia, Esther Garcia Tio, Sarah Alegria, Nancy Dargart, Lisa Langton, Joel Fieldspausch. I am so sorry. I love you.
Your name, man.
Joel. And then finally, Kayla Batch. Thank you all so much for supporting the work that we're doing.
Thank you.
It means the world to us.
Thank you.
None of the stuff that we're doing is possible without your support. And if you would like to become a patron, you're welcome to. We definitely would love that. And you can check out more about our patron community at nickandalina.com/patron. And there are some really cool rewards for all of the patrons there, including some merchandise and a lot of different giving levels. It's as cheap as a coffee a week if that's your thing. So anyways, moving on to why we are here. And in case you're hearing some background noise and you're wondering, are they shooting this podcast somewhere in the middle of Afghanistan? No, we are in Northwest Ohio, and we brought our families together for dinner, and our children are all
Trapped.
They're trapped. We barricaded them in the living room.
Being neglected.
The TV is helping.
They're watching Tangled.
them.
If you're hearing some music or lines that you recognize from the movie Tangled, just
Feel free to sing along.
Yeah, feel free to sing along. But yeah, if you hear any ruckus, that's what it is. Maybe one of us might have to step away at some point. Yeah. Anyways, here we are. And I'm actually going to pass the baton over to you, my love, because you prepared some cool stuff for us to talk about on this topic of marriage and being hot and steamy in our marriages.
Hot and steamy. So these are 3 secrets, not just steps or things. These are secrets to a hot and steamy
We're going to
marriage.
learn the secret.
These 3 secrets are, ready for this? Growth, pursuit, and...
What's the last one?
This is a fun word. Mutuality.
Oh, did you literally invent that word for this?
I thought it was a real word, so it is now.
You heard it here first, folks. Mutuality.
Did you say folks.
Listen, I'm Cuban. I don't know what I'm saying half the time.
It's the little thing.
English is only my second first language, okay?
Okay, all right. So let us begin with growth. So when I mean growth, I don't mean like, let's all get fat together. I mean like, let's grow as people.
Did anyone mistake when she said that? Did anyone assume when she said growth that she meant let's all get fat together?
I was trying
the wrong person.
I was trying to keep things light and fluffy. All right,
Okay,
so continue to grow yourself as an individual to be a better person for your spouse, for God,
Yes.
for yourself, you know.
I love that.
So what does that look like? Pursuing holiness for yourself with your spouse.
Well, and
that
why? Why?
No, sorry. I used the wrong word there. Growing
Why is
in
growth
holiness.
important, right? Like, I think that it's so easy to be complacent. And I don't mean that to like be ironic. I mean that in just a legitimate, like, hey, I found my stride. I found my career. I found our routine as a family. Like, isn't that good enough?
No, it's never good enough.
I don't disagree with you, but why?
Because if you're not going forward, then you're going backwards. There's no such thing as just staying still. So if you're
Yes.
complacent, if you're staying still, you're actually going backwards because there's so much more
Right.
to yourself as a person
Yeah.
in the future.
And that applies
Hopefully.
to all areas of life. That applies to your, your relationship with your spouse, your relationship with God, your profession. Bobby, like you go on training trips all the time and you're constantly expanding your expertise, right? I mean,
Yeah, it's true.
and it's vital. And I feel like that's why teachers have continued education. Even like doctors have to stay up on stuff.
If you don't keep practicing as a musician, you
Yeah.
kind of get
Sounds
rusty.
terrible.
And yeah,
Yeah.
your voice gets
Katie's like, I didn't mean to talk to you guys
Now seems like the
about how
perfect time.
terrible you sound.
So what are some ways that you guys grow as individuals, grow as a couple together? So what are some ways that we do this?
Starts with personal prayer, I think, right? Because your relationship with God, your search for God, actually it's God's search for you, but we can touch on that later with pursuit. It deepens that relationship and then allows you to change.
And if you're not growing yourself in your spiritual life, then it seems impossible to help your spouse grow in their
Yes.
spiritual life. And if you're not helping your spouse, then you guys aren't growing together either.
Yeah. And if you are trying to help your spouse spiritually, but you are not pursuing that for yourself, it's disingenuous. It's
Right.
phony.
But it's also important to help your spouse as you help yourself, because there is no plateau. Like, I'm not gonna, I need to help myself and grow in holiness until I get to a spot where I'm comfortable, and then I'm gonna help you get to heaven.
Yeah.
It doesn't work that way.
That's a great
The
point.
struggle is real and it's all the time. And I'm never gonna hit that plateau, and we aren't as a couple either, united.
The race doesn't end until you're dead and gone.
That's right.
Yeah. He's in human relationships. So people that we look up to, right? Like Nick, I look up to you. And I might think if I'm doing something at work or at home, seriously, and think like, if Nick were seeing this,
Oh my
would he
God.
How would
approve
you
of
feel
this?
about this?
Get out of here.
But if you can view your spouse in that way, like if I'm at work doing something that Katie would disapprove of, I shouldn't be doing this, like to have that mindset all the time, to think like
Yeah.
he's present
Yeah.
all the
I'm going to
time.
make sure they're okay.
That sounds fine.
So one of you mentioned earlier how important personal prayer is, and I want to kind of dive into that for a quick second, because if you're looking for your marriage to be enriched, for your marriage to be hot and steamy and delicious and all that stuff, like it might not be an obvious starting point to look at personal prayer, but I think it's probably the starting point. So to have God in your marriage, you have to pray together. You have to have, as a couple, a relationship with God. But it seems to me to be pretty self-evident that you cannot have a prayer life as a couple and a relationship with God as a couple if, as individuals, you are not proactively developing and cultivating that relationship with God for yourself as an individual first. Why do you guys think that's important?
So I'm human, and my capacity to love depends on how much I allow God to change my life, right? Like God is love, but I'm still broken. I'm still human, and I can only love as much as I'm physically capable of. So if I'm somebody who doesn't allow God in my life or don't believe in God, I still have some of it because I'm created in his image and likeness. Whether I believe that or not, I still
Someone's
Harbor
gotta
God's
go
love
potty.
in me. That's
Is that one yours?
we're coming, Jack.
Oh dear.
So if you're listening or watching and you don't understand what just happened, one of the kids just cried out, "I have to go potty," but like it was like this desperation.
Oh, I don't know if we recorded the part where we told them that we have locked the children in, barricaded them in the living room.
Yeah.
With a movie, neglecting them.
Well, we
They're
gave
gonna
them
be
ice
all right.
cream. I don't think that's neglectful. I've given them all of my be good options here.
Gus
I gave
was spooning it off the carpet.
Oh my gosh. Is that real?
So real.
That's amazing.
Gussie. Oh boy.
He's awesome.
Yeah, he is.
So if I allow God to allow me to love more, then I'm a greater lover, both in human relationship and in intimate relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that goes for everybody, not just your spouse. And then a continual prayer in the term of growth would also include to see my spouse, Katie, as God sees her. And because I'm human, I can never see her as God completely sees her, but I can continue to grow until the day I die.
And the closer you grow to God, the more your heart and your vision conforms to His.
Exactly.
It's so beautiful.
It really
It's
is.
like
Oh
poetry.
man, if Katie could have been here.
I know, right?
It was great.
That's some good stuff, man.
But that's the reality of parenting, is that you
Yep.
want to make God laugh, make plans like
Yep.
these.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's record a podcast.
Yeah.
So now that Katie's back, let's talk about the importance for personal growth, for personal development, for the sake of your.
Who is that?
Praise God.
If you're listening to or watching the podcast right now, my mom just came into the house and that's getting the kids all excitable.
If you want to make God laugh, make
Big
plans.
plans. Like, hey, let's record a podcast.
Kids will be fine. That's cool.
So why don't we touch on how important community is for personal growth, why community
Yeah.
is important for personal growth.
I don't know if you guys talked about this. I'm just going to go back for a second.
Okay.
I was gone. But in addition to praying, I think it's very important to pray for your spouse
Ooh.
and pray for your marriage. I think there's a lot of people that, I don't know, maybe they do that. But just, if you're in an active prayer life, you should be praying for your spouse and for them to grow.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that the other thing that's important is a Eucharistic attitude towards your marriage and your family. And what I mean by that is an attitude and a spirit of thanksgiving.
Yes.
So like part of our prayer every evening together as a couple before we go to bed is Thanksgiving. Like we thank God for the day. We thank God for our children. We thank God for our marriage every day. And if you go into your relationship with your spouse with that attitude of gratefulness, it doesn't mean that everything's perfect. I mean, luckily for you, like you married someone that's pretty much perfect.
Oh my God. Too.
But in all seriousness, it's not a question of like waiting for things to be perfect to be grateful for the marriage, but it's more that like it really is a profound and amazing and beautiful thing. And now there are marriages that are hurting. There are marriages that are struggling, and there's a lot of pain out there. There are people very close to any of us. If you're watching or listening, or maybe even it's you, like marriage, don't misunderstand, like it's not easy.
No.
Yeah.
And so that attitude and spirit of gratefulness, like it can become an impetus for that trajectory of like the lens through which you see your spouse. When, even with our kids, like we teach our kids that if our kids are complaining about stuff, it's like, well, what are you thankful for? And we make sure that our children in their bedtime prayers, they have to mention what they're thankful for from their day. Like we need to, if we're looking at the world through this lens of thankfulness, like it's really, really hard to hold bitterness, or like a victim attitude, or, I just think that that's fundamentally crucial.
Right.
Amen. Heaven is achieved here. And that's how we get there. And we're not going to get there by complaining every day or by not being grateful, thankful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another point going along with having a healthy community to surround yourself with is who you seek counsel from is so important. So like there are some things that I just can't talk to my parents about because I don't want to like jeopardize their relationship with Nick or something. Like back when we were dating, that was an issue because I was very much naive and was like, Mommy, Daddy, what do you think of this? And it caused so much tension. So yes, surround yourself with, fellow holy people that'll bring you up closer to God, closer to each other. And then counsel, don't go asking people that, obviously do not have their brains on straight.
Yeah. Because when you're looking for advice from people, you know who to ask to get what advice. It's a reality. Like, and a lot of times we kind of go to the people that we want to hear a certain answer from.
Right.
Sure.
To validate our choices or validate our perspective.
Yeah. I think just personally for us, we're really blessed to have such a strong group of community and friends who believe what we believe. And we also have these friends who not only support our marriage, but they're warriors for our marriage. So, it's not, I'm going to go to Alina and say, you would never believe what Bobby did. These are, the top 10 reasons why he's terrible. And then she's over there like, he sucks, but like just having people that are on your side.
And something I really respect about you, whenever we do talk about our men, like in group, which we never really do, but if they come up, it's like always affirming words that we use about them. Like, oh my goodness, my husband is like doing this and it's awesome. Like we never are sitting there bashing our husbands.
But it's not coming from a place of like phoniness or trying to pretend everything's gravy. Right. It's more that spirit again of thankfulness and acknowledging the good instead of dwelling on the bad. And it doesn't mean you don't process the challenges and what seems bad, but it's like you kind of choose what type of a world you want to live in the ways in which you process stuff.
That's so true.
Attitude is everything.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't be blind to problems, but like a lot of times we create problems when they're not there, or we exacerbate problems into something that they really aren't.
Right.
So that's again why community is so huge, because they can help us keep our heads on straight about stuff.
Yeah. And generally people don't recognize their own bad habits. I mean, depending on the habit, of course. But when you're in communion with a group of guys or girls like that, and you guys are sharing those kinds of things, those struggles, those joys, it really sheds a lot of light on your own darkness. Like, man, I really need to grow in that area,
Absolutely.
So let's go to the next one, pursuit.
Well, and I want to circle back, though. You mentioned something interesting about the idea of God pursuing us.
Yeah.
Go into that. What did you mean when you said that?
What's unique to Christianity in comparison to other religions is religion, most people secularly view it as this search for God, right? Like this person is religious or they're trying to be holy, or even people who really are holy and they come off as holy, a lot of times are viewed as somebody searching God, or they've searched and maybe perhaps found God, but it's not the case. Christianity, please.
They've said yes to God searching for them, or God calling them.
We open the door. Yeah. It's like the idea of Jacob's ladder, today's first reading, right? God comes down the ladder. It's so unique to Christianity compared to other religions.
Somebody's knocking at your door.
Right? That's exactly right. Yeah, it's God's search for man, and we are simply allowing him to change our hearts. And if we are going to shut ourselves off to that change, then you're going to close a lot more doors than simply your spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So when I mean pursuit, putting God first, pursuing God, then pursuing your spouse, then your children, and then all the other crap. So a lot of people have this totally upside down where career is first. Like, I got to get this job and then I'll be able to focus on marriage and stuff like that. Like, there are seasons when you will be working a lot and you won't be able to spend as much time together because you got to make ends meet. You have to pay the bills. But if life is becoming so out of balance, as we experienced just recently, there have to be changes. Yeah. Because your marriage is in jeopardy. If life is chaotic, chaos is never good. And it always breeds more chaos and more confusion. Yeah. So, putting God first.
I remember it was like a week-ish before I submitted my notice at my previous job that you sat down with me. I was working like I always was. You
were working all the time. And we were trying to get our business off the ground.
And
you were working 9 to 5. Job. And you had other clients on the job. He never slept. It was terrible. Yeah. And then I was raising these 3 kids and I was just like burnt out. Yeah. Because that's not my forte. and you just sat down with me and you basically lovingly but sternly said, like,
there needs to be a change, and like we can't keep waiting.
Yeah.
And something like a week after that moment, and in that time, we were praying and discerning, and
we made the leap of faith.
And I submitted my notice, and and now we're doing this full time.
Praise God.
And our marriage, well, I mean, we were never like struggling terribly, but me as a person, as an individual, I am more healthy because we are healthy, and our family life is much more balanced. You know, sometimes I wonder if we're going to eat next month still, but it's okay.
Again, thank you to our patron community.
Patrons to feed our family. But anyway, so pursuing. Have you guys like ever experienced? I know you're traveling a lot with stuff, so I don't know.
Yeah, it was huge. Just my last job. So I fix hospital machines for a living. It's been my career since
when you're not playing guitar for Nick and
2010.
Alina.
When I'm not playing guitar for Nick and Alina, that will soon be my full-time gig.
Oh,
That's right. Again, nickandalina.com/patron.
Gotta feed Bobby's family.
Gotta get him on a salary.
So
Go
We should bring all our kids out here and just be like, do you want them to eat?
Someone can sing like Sarah McLachlan. I will.
In the arms of
what were we talking about?
angel.
So you're traveling. And
Oh, yeah, my job. Right. So I was field service doing this, pretty much making my own schedule the whole time during my career. And I got a job, my last job before my current one, where I was traveling all the time. And the condition when I got the job is that I would travel less than 20% of the, or 20% or less of the time. Mm-hmm. So I had a job in Dayton installing a cart washer, and I was home every night sleeping, but I wasn't getting home until 7:30 at night. And right when the kids go to bed. So after 2 weeks of that, I got another job offer that was significantly less money, my current job. And we prayed about it, called my boss and said, man, I'm not seeing my kids at night. This can't happen. It's got to change.
I feel, go ahead.
Well, that key right there that you suggested, that God is first and then spouse. And that is huge right there. A lot of people overlook the spouse versus kids, especially when your kids are 3 and 2 and 1, because they're 100% dependent on mom and dad. Not just mom, but mom and dad. If you're listening, we desperately need fathers.
Yeah.
That's something I struggled with for a while. Because you see the needs of your kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's so obvious. And it's not always obvious to see the needs of your spouse.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, I have this baby that's crying. And, it's so obvious that I need to take care of these kids.
Right.
And so just my order of priority was kind of messed up for a while. And that took a lot of work to kind of figure that out.
I think there has to be like a season of grace for that too. Because
Amen.
when they're newborns, you're just darn tired.
Yeah.
And there's nothing you can do for your spouse because you just need help. So,
but that example of the reason that it's easy to misdirect too much of our focus to the children and ignore the spouse, like the example you just gave about the reason, which is that the kids are crying, they complain when there's an issue.
all the time.
We as adults don't communicate enough our needs,
Yes, that's
right?
very true.
And what happened when you said to me, this isn't working, we need to make a change? What happened when you realized, like, this isn't working, I need to make a change? Like, when there's pain and there's challenge, like, it means something. Like, something is causing that. And I think that it's why God and his genius gave us pain receptors. And, like, if we hurt ourselves, we know that we got hurt. We can see it, we can feel it, and then look at the part of our body that we felt it, and we see, oh, we got to cut, whatever. And the reason that pain exists is to notify us that we need to fix something. And I think that we too often ignore pain in our relationships. And when that goes on for so long, because there are couples that just kind of becomes the status quo. Like, we just ignore this elephant in the room, that our relationship sucks, that you ignore me, that you, whatever, even something as extreme as cheating. Like, I'm just going to allow you to keep cheating because there's, it just is what it is, even though, I'm miserable. Like, there are so many different types of pain, but like, we have created this kind of culture of, pain is the norm. Like, marriage isn't I'm not going to experience God in my marriage. It's just kind of this thing that we share rent, or we share a mortgage, or whatever. Like,
Sure, we're roommates.
Yeah. And I think that from that framework, like, we need to take a serious look at our ability to communicate what we're feeling. We need to take serious stock of, like, am I communicating what I'm experiencing, the pain that I'm feeling? And then on the other end of it, are we receptive to hearing
Right.
that we are screwing up, right? Like when Alina sat down and told me like, we need to make a change. What that really meant is, Nick, you need to make a change. Like what that really meant is, Nick, you're screwing up.
Yeah, this isn't working and it's your job to fix it.
Right. And so it would have been so easy for me to get super defensive.
Sure.
Right.
And just be like, you know, what do you expect from me? I'm supposed to have a 9 to 5 and blah, 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 blah. And that is like, again, the status quo is to be defensive and to not have any mistakes in your portfolio. But the reality is we all suck a little bit and we all make mistakes. And like you have said a couple of times, Bobby, you're human. And, and so the willingness to be vulnerable and communicate the pain you're feeling, and it doesn't have to be extreme. Like even if it's something small, you can share that it made you uncomfortable. Like I didn't love it when you said this thing. Mm-hmm. You don't have to wait till it's like this huge dramatic thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then on the other end of it, the ability to hear that you made a mistake and admit like your feelings are valid, even if I don't see it the same way. So I need to address what you're experiencing.
Yeah. I think that's one of the struggling points that we've had. Because I'm like, why do you feel that way? It doesn't make sense. I don't get it. But we're learning. It's always a constant. If you're not going forward, you're going backwards, right? Again, pursuing. So something else we were mentioning, laugh, enjoy time together. Like in the pursuit of each other, freaking have fun, you know? Like all these couples like just don't ever hang out. They don't ever do stuff together. Do stuff together. It's the ticket to enjoying life. Like we love hanging out together all the time. What if you marry someone that your personalities just, you realize too late that they aren't working? Like
you both need Jesus.
Figure it out.
But that's an interesting question, because if we go to this issue of like, dude, we have centuries and millennia of marriages that worked and were the only reason civilization continued, because, you know, the procreation that came with those marriages. People didn't get married over some extreme confidence in compatibility.
Sure.
It was
a decision, and they stuck to that decision.
Yes. And I think that we are doing a violent disservice to our society right now with this overemphasis on the compatibility question.
Yes,
and
I agree.
Because that, like, it'd be great to be compatible with your spouse, and over time you can grow together into compatibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
But
that's true.
But that's not fundamentally what marriage is about.
Nothing is perfect, as
We
I always
have
say.
to remember too every day that love and marriage is unconditional. It means no matter how much we are quote unquote incompatible, no matter how much you do that thing that I can't stand that you do, I love you. Dearly.
Wow.
Let's hear about it. Let's hear
That
about it.
doesn't exist between us. I don't have anything, but it's real, and that's part of the growth from us. I mean, and for us, we've experienced a lot of trauma. So like one day I woke up and was like, you know what? That thing I cared about yesterday, it really doesn't matter now that this has happened.
Yeah, you guys have a very strong, awesome
We've been through some stuff, but it's real that like people
You really
in marriage,
have.
people in marriage are going to experience that trauma, and you got to persevere through that.
Yeah.
Kind of not on the same topic.
All right, let's make a shift.
Just like the idea of sacrificial love as well. Like, there are things that Bobby loves that I'm kind of like, nah, you know. But,
Pretty much most things.
but I love Bobby, and making that sacrifice to where this is something I know you take joy from, and this is something that you find happiness in. So I'm going to do this because I want to see those things come out in you, not necessarily because I love watching Lord of the Rings, but I love.
Are you saying that you
but I
don't love
doing
watching
those things with you because I want to sacrifice
Absolutely.
my interest, and it goes the same way.
Yeah.
Bobby does those things for me as well.
I'm reading Kristen Lavren's daughter.
We could have an entire podcast on Kristen Lavren's daughter.
Tongue twister.
The best book.
What is that?
It's a book.
We'll talk about this
Google
another
it.
time.
Get out your phone.
So, great
Nobel
Catholic
Prize.
novel. Yeah, it's awesome.
All right. I believe you.
So it's important too in that pursuit to continually communicate those feelings that you guys were talking about earlier. You can't bottle those things up.
Yes.
And there should be things that you share between your spouse that you wouldn't tell anybody else. Right? And it doesn't have to be a secret. It's vulnerability, like opening yourself up to your spouse because you're united, whether
Being
you
real.
want to be or not. Like the sacrament of marriage is all about being united in God.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, you can fake it for a while.
Yeah.
But eventually you're going to get to a place in your marriage where it has to become real, or
Right.
it's not going to last.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
definitely.
That's beautiful.
How do you guys feel about the 5 love languages?
I know Katie's.
I'm more of a love sponge.
Is that one of them?
I don't like to
Just give it to
discriminate against any of the love languages.
Don't discriminate.
Well, hang on. Physical touch might be her least favorite.
I used to joke, and this is a joke, but I used to tell Bobby, just do everything for me and tell me how great I am.
It's true. And buy
And then
stuff
buy
for
me
you.
some stuff.
She likes purses. It's cool.
It's just that I don't.
Yeah.
But at night when we get in bed and she's ready to go to sleep, get off me. Don't touch me.
No.
Like it's
I just like a little bit of space. I don't think that.
Oh my
Andrew,
gosh.
our dear friend Andrew Reinhardt jokes that we're the littlest people he knows with the biggest bed you can buy. And it's true, we have a king.
That's amazing.
There is no reason.
You can't,
for
if you're
us-
watching the podcast,
we
you
could
can't
reach
tell, but
out.
Bobby and Katie are both like pretty short.
We could reach out and not touch each other.
I'm
on our bed.
5'6", might be 5'7" with my hair. She's like 5'1", I don't know.
That spiky hair.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
What were we even talking about?
I don't know, I
The 5
lost
love
it.
languages. So knowing how to
love
communicate
languages.
with your spouse in this pursuit of each other, you
Yeah.
know, you have to communicate the way they understand, but also like, you know, it would mean a lot for Nick to take out the trash, but I also know he's really stressed out half the time. So I have to give him grace, even though my love language would be a little bit more like service or something. But it's like, dude, he's servicing by working his butt off for the family downstairs in the basement. I'm going to do the trash, even though, you know, I was raised in my family. And that's another thing we're going to talk about is our family culture, climate, and how that affects.
Like the family of origin.
Right, your
Yeah.
family of
Yeah.
origin, sorry. So...
And that's not to say that I don't do the
No,
trash.
you do. You've gotten like actually a lot better. But I've had to be very patient and like helping him understand, you know, hey, let's do this.
This is something you could do.
It's an idea. I'm not pushing it.
Katie really enjoys
What is
when we
happening
talk
right now?
about cleaning, this mutual thing. This is on the next
We just went
subject,
over this
mutual.
weekend. I had like a
Yeah,
meltdown with my distaste for our house, and
just in the state
which
it's in.
sounds like terrible. These are like bratty problems, but
First world problems?
yes, absolutely. But I just like the house clean. And given my current condition and the kids, like it's just hard for me to keep up on it sometimes.
Katie's 7 months pregnant, by the way.
And
She's almost ready to go.
so I told Bobby, like, I just need help with this. And,
So you
Bobby
communicated your
responded.
need.
you know, in
There
a
we
way,
go.
yes.
It took a long time to get to this point, though,
Oh my gosh.
because she used to always have these every, I don't know, few weeks or whatever. I really need the house to be cleaned, and to me, that means this place is a disaster. All these kids' clothes are out. Everyone in the whole house's laundry needs done. The toys need picked up, and I do all that, and she's still like, "This place is disgusting." I didn't realize she
I had
meant-
to explain there's a difference between picking things up and like it
Yes.
looking like everything's
Right.
put away versus clean. Like the
clean
floors.
clean bathroom.
the-
That's what she
yeah.
wants.
Dusting,
She doesn't care if the kids' toys and clothes are
Yeah,
dirty or
like
whatever.
that. They can do that. I don't need
That
to do
actually
that.
surprises me about you that you wouldn't have been in tune with the actual like cleanliness aspect of
Well,
that.
to me, why bother cleaning if it first isn't picked up?
Yeah.
You know? But then, it's just, when she said, I need this place clean, I was just going to do it all, start from scratch. But, that stuff takes time.
Bring in the bulldozer.
Right?
All the place
And usually
down.
it leads to a spree of throwing things away, which is always a good feeling.
I
but
did. I
Yes,
threw
I
some
love
stuff
throwing
away
things
today.
away.
I
It's
love
great.
it.
It's the best.
Congratulations.
People who are married
this
and
is what I
struggling,
recommend.
this is what
Get
you
a
need
garbage
to do.
bag
Yep.
and just like walk around your house. If you don't love it, just throw it.
It's kind of like
You don't have to
confession.
throw it away. Donate it. Do it. Do whatever you do with your things that you don't want anymore. But
So if you want a hot and steamy marriage, throw crap away.
throw it away.
Seriously. Declutter.
Detach from the
Yeah.
world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Like these are just things. We don't need this stuff.
Yeah.
It goes back to that capacity of love. My capacity to love is only so much. And if I'm exhausting that love on other things, worldly things especially, then that's limiting how much I can love my family, especially my spouse.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that could be like hobbies too. I know some marriages, like the
Yeah.
dudes and women too, like have different hobbies that pull them away so much from their family, like
Oh,
PlayStation,
yeah.
stuff like that. and they're, again, not pursuing the priority here,
So let's specifically talk about that word pursuit for a moment. So we've kind of talked about a lot of things that fall into this category, but I want to hit it more head on. Like, you brought up the 5 love languages, and I think the reason you brought that up is because this idea of pursuit, like, I think one of the problems right now with the way that people are approaching relationships is the overemphasis on, and even if you're not doing it intentionally, it could be subconscious, but an overemphasis on, like, what am I getting out of this?
Right.
What are you doing for me? Real authentic pursuit is about the other person and what they need, what their needs and desires are, and you trying to provide that for that person, and serving that person, living for that person, and making yourself a gift to that person rather than demanding or desiring a gift for yourself. And I think that we kind of have that backwards.
Amen.
But also accepting that love, can be difficult for some people.
So being a gift to the other person and humbly receiving the gift of that person when they're offering themselves to you. Yeah.
It's also a sacrifice on both ends, though. It's never, what am I getting out of this, right? We're supposed to pick up our cross and follow him. And when did he ever do it for his sake?
Yeah, right.
Right? Like, let's look at Jesus' life, at least what we know of it in the Gospels. None of it's for him.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely.
Another thought that I had was have a dream to pursue together. So that could be something as small as, hey, next year, babe, let's have a dream to go on our second honeymoon or something, and just like having a common goal. It's stupid, but I feel like it's fun.
No, not
like
at all.
Big and little dreams along this life together, because
having shared aspirations. Yeah.
And something that we did when we were doing the marriage retreats for the newly engaged couples was to pick out a family credo or motto or something.
Yeah, like a family mission statement.
Yeah, a family mission statement. So that can help you keep your pursuit focused, We don't actually have a mission statement, but we do have a Bible verse that has been like our compass from the very beginning. It's Philippians
4 through 9.
4:6.
Well, it's 4 through 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's about anxiety and just not worrying about the world.
St. Paul says something like,
do not be anxious about anything, but in all things, through prayer and thanksgiving, bring your request before the Lord. Yeah.
And honestly, it's kind of neat because God really gave that verse to us. We didn't like sit down and think like, what's our verse?
Yeah.
It's really amazing how the day of our wedding, actually, my groomsmen prayed over me, and Pete Range was one of them. And we'll have him on the show sometime soon. And anyways, when he prayed over me in that group, he grabbed his Bible because he pretty much doesn't go anywhere without it. He's one of those, and
he's awesome.
He is. And he opens it up, and the Lord led him to read Philippians 4 through 9, and that verse prepared me to walk into the marriage wedding ceremony with you, the wedding service, and then
that was a beautiful day.
I shared that with you, and how awesome that was, and then God kept bringing that specific verse into the
throughout
forefront
our life,
over and over and over and over again, and it just became so clear that He was speaking that message to us. But so anyways, that's our kind of guiding principle, but we definitely encourage that you need to have common aspirations, but you need to have a common sense of mission for your marriage and family. Are there kids over there? What are they doing?
They're okay.
It's important though to have a family, something that's happening every day. Like for us, it's a family prayer. And we recently experienced the death of a son, and we have incorporated his name, Ezekiel Timothy. We know he's a living saint. He was baptized. He was incapable of sin, and his entire life is this almost strange, beautiful witness. It's not strange, but it's interesting to view it as no matter how short or long a life is, it is just as important as everyone else's.
Amen.
So to know that we have produced a saint and that he is right here with us, and the closer that we get to God in communion, especially the closer he is to us, to think that we've lost that connection is devastating, and we haven't. So every day now, almost every prayer, it's Ezekiel, Timothy, pray for us
That's awesome.
in everything we do. But to develop a family prayer of some kind,
Yeah, that's cool.
especially for the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to have a common sense of direction and mission as a family, and I think that it ties into what you were saying earlier, babe, about like when we have hobbies that pull us apart. It's not that we can't have differing interests, but when it gets to an extent that like our lives become about these things that they become things that define us, and those defining things are things that keep us more and more separate from our spouse.
Working out even.
It could be
Healthy
exercise.
Things. It could be good
Yeah,
things, but
absolutely.
you just go to the extreme.
It could literally be anything, even good things. And
even your children. Like if
Yep.
that is becoming like, oh, we need to please the children first and
children,
foremost.
pets, work,
Sorry,
friends. Cinnamon, we love you. Cinnamon's our cat. He's
She
just
hates
hanging
me.
out
He wants to kill
nonchalantly.
me.
We've seen marriages where the kids are out at soccer and baseball and, a million different places every night of the
Yes.
week, and mom and dad never see each other.
That'd be awful.
So just prioritizing your time.
yes.
Yep. Like
And that's
really,
what your
are the
culture
sports
makes
really
normal.
worth it?
Teaching your kids what's more important. Is
Yeah.
it going to baseball, or is it, the value of our family?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Family time starts with the spouse.
Yes.
It's important too. I would recommend a weekly night to do something that you guys have a mutual interest.
Scrabble.
Whether it's a show.
Yes.
Yeah, board game night is my thing. But if there's like a show, but the important thing is it's like maintenance, right? Like make a night of the week and make it concrete. Like, okay, Tuesdays, we're both free. We're going to make it happen every single Tuesday. This is happening in our house. And it just something that you can look forward to, even if you don't feel like
Yeah.
doing it that night, to persevere in that, because it's, again,
Make
it's
it a
like maintenance.
priority. It's not, neither of us are doing anything, so now we can spend time together. That time should be
Yeah.
before many other things
Yeah.
that you choose.
Right. Yeah.
Something tying into that is never give up. So it's never too late to start doing these things. If
Yeah.
there's a marriage struggling right now, it's just never too late. But it takes effort.
Yes.
It takes a lot of effort, a lot of perseverance, a lot of grace.
Sometimes counseling. Yeah.
Counseling is
Every
awesome.
marriage is different.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we all bring to marriage lots and lots of wounds,
Yep.
especially, and I think we're going to move on to mutuality now. So, sex.
Ooh.
Speaking of wounds, sex is a really difficult thing, but it's an outward sign of this, how would you say it? I don't know.
Well,
the word sex got me all confused.
You got all flustered.
I can't think straight.
Have a drink of water.
It's not strong enough.
Oh my gosh.
So, yeah, but it's a very vulnerable thing.
It is.
And if you've got a past, if you've, it's just scary sometimes,
It's
and you have to communicate, like, hey, I don't like this, I really
Wow,
like
we're
that.
going there.
What? It's all part of the thing.
Yeah, it's real talk.
I get
Sorry,
what
I
you're
know
saying.
we were going to talk about sex.
It's the most total gift of self you can
Yeah.
give. Like it's
Yeah.
the ultimate last gift. Hi, Emma. As
your
our
ears,
daughter,
children.
who's 3, our offspring, is calling out for me. Oh, and she walked away. Okay. You
All
can't
right.
give yourself any more than through that intimacy, because that's how we procreate, right? That's how we, with God, create humans.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in mutuality, respecting each other is so huge. And I know, like, people are like, oh, men need lots of respect. But, dude, women need respect, too. It's not just a dude thing. Like,
Yeah,
women
I'm
need
with you.
respected, too. And what's the thing that women always say they need? We need to be heard. No, I want respect, too. Okay, I don't just want to be heard. I want my opinion to matter. Sorry. I get really fired up. It's bad. I was just telling them that I have some anger issues.
Oh my gosh.
I'm working on it, Jesus still loves me. So
Indeed.
anyway,
He does.
thoughts about mutuality, sex, healing, affirming language.
Well,
any of that
can you
stuff.
try to define mutuality since you invented that
yeah,
word?
there's a lot.
It's
little
not
bit
a
better?
made-up word. It can't be. I think I Googled it. Okay, thank you.
You knew all this time about the word?
So it's like a symbiotic thing. It's like you give, I give, kind of like what we were talking about earlier, but it's never like a leeching thing. Like, I'm just going to use you up until
Oh,
your
sure.
blood dry, Like,
Wow.
it's not just like sex is a, please me, kind of thing. It's a mutual thing.
Gift of self, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. Help me not be embarrassed, Bobby.
Please, this is great. And something that we are very big on, thank you for this, because Katie has been such a help for me here.
She's so scared right now. But
No,
I'm sorry.
It's absolutely critical for married people to be on the same page about important things, especially in particular parenting. It's really difficult when you have a child who wants one thing and mom always gives or dad always gives, and then the opposite says no all the time. And one's the bad guy, the other's the good. It just creates this dysfunction of mom and dad not being in communion with each other.
Right, but that's how to make sure that your kid loves you more.
Indeed.
Oh my gosh.
But that doesn't show a community of marriage, right?
Yeah.
So like being mutual on the same page with most things.
I mean, it goes parenting, absolutely, but even with families as well, in-laws and extended families, we might not always be on the same page, but we need to have an outward front that we are.
Yes.
together.
That's where
We need to
sacrifice comes
have,
into play.
That's so huge.
Yeah, like we need to be
A team.
on the same team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Regardless of, we can talk about it later.
Yep.
But just even that idea of respecting each other in that moment. So sometimes I see him parent and I may or may not agree with what he's doing.
Right.
But something that we've had to work on in that moment, I'm on his side.
Yeah.
So it's not me and the kids against him,
Right.
but it's him and I being a team together to stand up for what we believe in.
Right.
Definitely.
And then if we disagree, we can talk about that later. But, other people need to believe that we're...
I think right in line with that is the way in which we speak about our spouse, whether it's to our children or to our
To everyone.
community or to our spouse. We need to be building each other up to each other and about each other.
Sometimes that's challenging because you spend more time, hopefully, with your spouse than anyone else. So it's real easy to have a rough day, especially at work, and come home and just be complacent or upset. Just take it out on the person you spend the most time with.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's also really easy when you're hanging out with the guys, drinking a bud, whatever. I don't know, is that a thing? Gross. To like
You're awesome, Katie.
to complain about your wife. Or
Do you do that?
I absolutely don't. I'm keto. I don't drink beer.
We've got a great group of friends. That doesn't happen in our group of friends.
yeah,
anyway.
that's
Yeah.
again that
we
community.
went back to this.
Yeah.
Don't hang out with those people. If you got
Yes.
those kind of friends in your life, you should cut them off.
Like you need to
Exactly.
have friends that if they hear you complaining about your spouse, that they call you on your
how can we
bullcrap.
help you
Yeah.
fix yourself here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about how screwed up you are.
Let's talk about how awesome your spouse is. Let's
Yeah.
shed a different
Yeah.
light on this.
Yeah. But yeah,
So,
being
yeah.
a united front, being a team in all things.
It's like life is a war. I love that analogy. Like scripture tells us to put on the armor, all that stuff, because we're in a war. And your spouse is your comrade in battle. And like you were saying, you got to have a united front with people, especially like our families and stuff, because everybody's watching. Our kids are watching.
Yeah.
Everybody is learning and looking up to you and thinking, okay,
Yeah.
I like that. The world has become so jaded by all the crap we see, and people need good role models, even if we
Yeah.
aren't complete. Like you said, we may
Right.
not agree right now, but we're sure as hell going to work on it, kind of thing. So, war. It's a war.
Yeah. Children need that security of their parents being together.
Yes.
I mean, as a child, your first experience of God is through your parents, whether they're Christians or not. I mean, it's the unity of God in two people. But marriage is also a cross,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
suffering is a gift. But when
But you're entitled to never suffer. No, that's what the culture is
Right.
proposing, right? Like avoid suffering at all costs. You're entitled to pleasure and pleasure alone.
Sure, which is such a bizarre concept. But the closer that the more that we suffer, the closer we are to Christ. But regardless, when parents get divorced, my parents got divorced when I was young. Katie's parents are still together. It's a remarkable example. 43 years, I think.
Something like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. It's awesome.
What's their secret?
I don't know.
Is their marriage hot and steamy?
I don't know.
I don't want to know.
But when parents get divorced, they put the cross down and kids pick it up.
Yeah.
That is so true.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like to escape their own suffering, they're imposing that suffering on their children.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't go away. I mean, it doesn't matter how old the kids are. They could be over 18 and out of the house or off to college, whatever, in their
Yeah.
own marriage. Like divorce shatters people's
It does.
At any
security.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
you start wondering, like, oh crap, are we gonna be okay? Like
Yeah.
those people, we respected them. They're not okay. Are we
Yeah.
gonna be okay? It's terrifying.
Absolutely.
I mean, we're okay.
We're good.
We're gonna be great.
Because we're a
Why
team.
do I keep
and we
hitting
have
you?
we have this made up thing called mutuality.
It's not made up. It's real.
Are you guys on the same page? Is this mutual?
Yeah.
Let's have a united front and talk about this.
Talk about it later.
Talk about it later.
That's awesome.
All right. So some pitfalls of marriage. So we covered the 3 secrets, I think, pretty well. I did want to mention forgiving each other as part of mutuality. Like,
Yeah.
you know, we're all gonna, like you said that awesome story about the married couple.
So there was a couple, they got married, and the husband said to his to-be bride, I'm going to hurt you, and I don't mean to, but it's the reality of my human nature that I may fail, right? So he's asking her forgiveness ahead of time, which is just super beautiful.
Yep.
In a really profound way. It helps us all to forgive because we are entitled, we think, right?
Yep.
Like I'm entitled to all of this, but that's where that prayer of thanksgiving every single night together in communion is super important because, and some people also, I wanted to touch on this a little bit ago when we talked about the hierarchy of values, God first, then your spouse, then your children, then everything else. I heard my team leader tell me after I said that to him, that my job is less important than my family. He said, yeah, but you wouldn't be able to support your family without this job. There are plenty of people looking for work right now, right? Like I could go anywhere and at least sustain my mortgage and my family. But in addition to that, there are other people who just struggle with the idea of how could, like my spouse is right next to me. How could I put God before my spouse, right? They struggle with that whole idea. You wouldn't have your spouse or yourself without God. Everything is a gift.
Yeah. That's a perfect segue for the next thing I wanted to share.
Awesome.
Which is that the best starting point, it's in line with personal prayer, is to realize that your spouse cannot fulfill you. Like, don't even try. Like,
Yeah,
stop trying. Because
sacrifice.
you've been trying,
Right.
stop trying.
Yep.
Your spouse is not going to fulfill you.
Humans are always going to fall short of
Yeah.
that eternal place.
If you're looking for your spouse to fulfill you, it's not going to work out and it's going to be miserable. And then you're going to think that you made a mistake
You're
getting
gonna
married.
put so much pressure on them
Yeah.
Yes.
to be perfect, and they gonna fail.
And that's not unconditional love. It's not sacrificial love, right? Like I married you because I love you for who you are as a person.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do everything I can to try and get you to heaven. That's my goal.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if your spouse is not going to fulfill you, the obvious next step is God alone can fulfill you. And regardless of what happens, because you could lose, like your spouse could die in an accident or something, or you could lose your house, you could lose your things, you could lose your job. There's nothing in this world that you could not lose except for God. And if you and your identity and what defines you is based on anything other than God, then you're building a house on
Sand.
sand, on weak ground.
The wise man built his house upon the rock. Okay.
Yeah.
Protestants
God is
out
pure
there.
love, right? And happiness. So if I don't have happiness, then I'm lacking in God somewhere. So if your marriage is unhappy, it may be because you're not mutually with God at the center. I really feel for those marriages where one person has the conversion and the other has fallen behind, because
Yeah,
that's
that's
a
so hard.
tough place to be.
And let's not diminish, like, gosh, we're painting a quasi rosy picture here, but like,
Indeed.
there are some situations that couples are facing that are so hard, and frankly, if we're being very real, there are some relationships, some marriages that you need to get out of. And there aren't many of those, in my opinion, but there are some. If you're getting physically abused, that's a problem. You need to be safe. Your children need to be safe. And that's just an example of what I mean. But so I don't want to diminish, it's not like every situation is salvageable, but I really think most are salvageable.
Yeah. It's
If
just
both
people
parties
are-
consent.
If both
Exactly.
parties
Yeah.
want it. Yes, exactly.
That's the hard part.
And that is the hard part, because you can't control people. People are going to do what they want to do.
Right.
And you hope that you marry someone that wants what you want.
Right.
You hope you marry someone that you have mutuality with.
It's a real word. You better watch yourself while you sleep, boy.
That's awesome.
All right, so some pitfalls of marriage. So what are some things that, if you want to openly share, like that have been hard. Like for us, holidays are so
Yikes.
hard with
my gosh.
trying to balance in-laws and your family, my family, and you've got like a bajillion divorced people in your family. So it's like, what do you do? And boundaries are huge in that whole thing. And just remembering this is our family right here, first and foremost. And then everybody else is important. But it's tough because, you know, you've got the happy feelings of like going to grandma's house on Christmas, and you don't want to give that up. But then your husband also has going to grandma's house on the same day feelings, you know? So how do you deal with that, you know?
Well, and it isn't just the expectations that you and your spouse might have of the way things should play out, but it's also the expectations that the extended family have, the family of origin, the parents.
To respect that
nobody is entitled to you or your children and you and your children's time. Nobody's entitled to that.
Right.
And drawing those boundaries is really, really hard. And if you're hearing me right now and you're like, what are you talking about? They demand us. Well, then you need to take a serious look at that because that's not healthy.
It's again to go back to the pursuit that the hierarchy of values is God first, then spouse, then children.
Right.
And if extended family are going to interfere with that too much on Christmas, it's unfortunately time to cut that off. And sometimes, like for us, it's helped to communicate that sort of thing to like my extended family.
We've been
like
very blessed that they've been very flexible with us and our family. And I know Bobby made a comment similar to that to me years ago where he said, you know, eventually, or not eventually right now, but our family is you and I and the kids, and our extended family kind of comes secondary to that. And at the time I was kind of offended because I grew up very obedient to my parents. And just the idea that I would be disappointing my parents and not doing something that they would find pleasing was very hard for me. So it took me a while to realize, like, my family now is my husband and my children. And luckily, we had that discussion with our parents and extended family, and they were very responsive to it. But
yeah, and that's not disobedience to extended family. It's more so following your vocation. God has called me to be first a husband, then a father.
Amen.
That's awesome.
That's huge. I mean, that the ability for not understanding that to create division in a couple is massive. And I know that for us, when we have struggled with that exact same thing, that has created some of the greatest tensions that we've experienced, I think.
Yeah, even more than money. Like, money is like, whatever. But family stuff is like...
First world problems.
Right.
I know.
I mean, it's there, but it's like we're both on the same page. Like, crap, we're in the red right now.
Again, nickandalina.com/patron.
We're okay now, thank God.
But I mean, what do they say? The however many things that couples typically struggle with: finance, what?
Sex.
Yeah, and then I think family stuff.
Yeah,
holidays and everything.
I mean,
family stuff.
Yeah, we really financially.
Alina's going to check on the kids.
I mean, we don't have a lot of issues in those main areas. So.
Thanks be to God.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah.
Some of the pitfalls of marriage. I want Alina to be here for this. Some of the pitfalls of marriage that we've experienced are, and this may be part of it, seeing your own personal flaws in your children.
Oh, yes.
Like when we realized how much our kids were opening the back door, yelling at the dog in the backyard. We're like, oh man, that sounds just like me, doesn't it?
Oh, I'm so glad it's not
seeing your vices in your kids.
It's not. Everyone goes through this.
It hurts sometimes. It stings, to see that. And I used to kind of struggle with just like being quick to frustration.
Yes.
And that's something I've really prayed about and worked on myself over the years. And, you know, I don't know if you would agree, but I think it's come a long way. But now I see even my kids have those qualities. And not even that I was quick to frustration with them or quick to anger with them, but just like those qualities are like built in them from me, and I see it and I think, oh my gosh, like that was me, and
it's terrifying.
Yeah. But to think, I mean, they can work on it too, I guess. But it's hard to see your kid open the back door and scream at the dog to come inside.
Right.
Or when they scream at each other.
And know that you might have had something to do with that negative quality of theirs.
But when we're looking into the mirror of our children replicating our behavior, as challenging as that can be, it's also, we can use that sobering moment to like propel us to make changes in ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's never too late. Like the kids will continue to adapt and learn from our behavior even when we're improving, right? And so they will also learn those improvements. And we should never feel like, oh man, I've screwed them up. It's too late now.
Right.
You know, that's the wrong way to see that, for sure.
Something.
And I've even seen the other way. Some of Bobby's best qualities I see in our kids sometimes, and it's beautiful.
Awesome. For you.
Like Jack, he loves to serve people, and it reminds me of Bobby. If I need help, he's the first person to get up and try and do it. And Emma she's a people pleaser. So if she has a toy and she says to someone she wants to play with it still, even after they ask, and she sees they get upset, she'll instantly give it to them because she wants to see them happy.
Yeah.
And those are just beautiful qualities that I see her get from Bobby and Jack.
Thank you. Actually, as we were leaving to come here, I was going to the bathroom and I came out. Everybody was ready at the front door. Dog was in her cage. And Jack was getting my shoes out of the cubby for me. And nobody asked him to do that. Like, it was just a beautiful thing to see.
That's so
Yeah.
That is awesome.
But in addition to that, like having your children see that, they also need to see that some level of intimacy and reality too.
Yeah.
Like let them see you hug mom when you get home or dad
Yes.
and give each other a kiss. Like don't discredit that because the kids are around. And also too, to I mean, you don't want to like fly off the handle, but like to see that you're broken too. And something that we're really big on at night, especially during our family prayer, is apologizing to each other. Okay, like, does anybody have any apologies that need to be made? Let's talk
I
about
That's
those
love
awesome.
things.
that.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
We're gonna pick that up.
We're gonna steal that.
It's great. But yeah, to show your children, like, number one, this isn't fake. I'm not going to pretend like mom and dad never disagree, because there are disagreements that take place. We're people. It's hard to live with people. I mean, just like we disagree with our children.
Yeah.
We can grow from these things all together.
Absolutely.
So to see them, it's a good model of forgiveness and also a good model of unity when you can.
I mean, it's hard for us to apologize. So I know we see it even in them. It's hard for them to apologize.
Yeah.
So just practicing that skill is
Yeah.
so important.
Well, and we definitely, from as soon as they were able to speak, we have ingrained in them that you do apologize. You have to say, I am sorry for whatever you did.
Right.
And then the other person has to respond, I forgive you.
Yeah.
And they give each other a hug. They have to say it because, and that gets to the next, one of the things that you wrote here is like communication, right? We talked about it
Teaching
earlier.
your kids how to communicate.
Teaching your kids how to
Absolutely.
communicate, making your kids functional members of society. You
We
know,
gotta
Like-
talk about these feelings. We know when there's something wrong with our kids, when they're off and they get
Right.
upset very quickly. Sometimes I just sit Jack down privately, like, let's go to your room or wherever he's comfortable. Talk to me. What's going on? Are you okay? You know, like, how are you feeling right
Yeah,
now?
treat your kids like they're people.
Yes.
We've noticed even, like, not to get heavy here, but in the death of our son, like, Jack feels that. And it doesn't always come out as, I'm sad right now because this happened. You know, he might be acting out in a different way. And it stems from that, but he doesn't know how to communicate that to
Yep.
us yet. So
He's
just,
5, by the way.
yeah, teaching him those skills. And not every kid has, you know, the trauma that he has had in their lives, but but they have something. I mean, I teach
Yeah.
kindergarten, and something that seems so silly, you know, this kid took my pencil and I'm throwing a fit about it. That's a real feeling for kids. And
That's
as silly
interesting.
as it seems to us, it's something that they need to work through, because eventually they are going to have those big problems that
Right.
are real. And
Yeah.
if they don't know how to deal with it, then
Yeah.
It's also the expectation. And part of that communication is like we tend to hold higher standards for our kids, especially younger ones. If you have multiple children, you expect them to behave like your firstborn did, right? Or you expect them to behave like another friend's kid who's 3 does.
Yes.
So like, and it's okay to have these expectations, but to communicate them to them and to make sure that everybody's on the same page about
and let your
where
kids
these
be
expectations
themselves.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, they are independent individuals.
Yeah. Emma has fuzzy boots on right now, and it's
Which
80
are
degrees
adorable.
out.
Thank you.
But she was adamant that she needed to wear them, and I said it's hot out, and she said no, I'm going to wear them. So I said all right.
Yeah.
Even I said on the way here, why is Emma wearing her boots?
Yeah.
Katie said, let her be herself.
My mom, when I was in preschool, I was every day I dressed up in a costume of a superhero. And I was the only one. Like, there weren't perpetual costume parties at school. I was just that guy. That was like,
costume party.
Why don't you do that now?
well, I guess I could. I mean, I live where I work, so no one's gonna. Well, you might judge me. I
I
don't
would
know.
judge you.
But yeah, and that definitely helped me to kind of come out of my shell and figure out like what I loved and what I was interested in. And
That's great.
yeah, absolutely.
All right, so back to marriage. Are there any other pitfalls that we, there's obviously a bajillion, but are there any that we want to wrap up with, or?
Something that came to mind right away is making yourself a victim. If you, the enemy is just dying to find a little open window, a little crack in the door. He wants to
It's his
wreck
number one.
marriages.
Family is the nucleus of society.
And if you start
Part
to
of the
see
church.
yourself as a victim of your circumstances and woe is me, and that becomes your programming, if you're giving yourself that programming by thinking that way over and over again, and that will devour you. And the enemy will use that to devour you because he is a prowling lion seeking the ruin of souls. And any amount that is happening. So the way that we program ourselves, the way that we allow ourselves to think, the lens through which we choose to see things, because it's an active choice. Like I am choosing at any given moment to see things a certain way. And if you
Not deluding yourself,
right,
but seeing like the other side of the coin rather than.
yeah, or just trying to be objective and thinking like things are not as bad as right now it feels like it is.
Yeah.
I think that's huge because
Looking ahead
any-
instead of behind, or being,
Yeah. But any little foothold or crack in the door that we can offer accidentally to the enemy, he's going to take advantage of and exploit. And so looking for any of those little holes in ourselves, it's not about like looking for the little holes in your spouse, but the holes in ourselves, because the only person in the entire world that you can control is you. And if there's a problem, start with you, because that's the easiest place to start, because you can actually control that.
Right.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
Cool. So in closing,
Wait, so how does all of this
okay.
get me a hot and steamy marriage?
Well, the holier you are, the
Yeah.
hotter
I
you
would
get.
say I would say that if in the way that I treat you and in the way that I approach our marriage, you feel loved and pursued and appreciated,
Yes.
some hot and steamy stuff is going to go on.
It's the security of marriage.
Yeah.
But it's also that giving of self is total, free, fruitful, and faithful.
Yeah.
Without any of those elements, then you're holding back.
Yeah. I've never been more excited about you in my life.
Oh, babe.
I mean it.
Likewise, the feeling is mutual.
And I really, really believe
Or is it
that
mutuality?
I really, really believe that the hot and steamy nature of our current dynamic exponentially increased to become what it is right now when I made the decision to make a change, because you made the decision to confront me about the need for the change.
Oh, we both noticed.
Yeah, we both knew it was there, but like it was our choice to take action and really, act on these things that we knew were there and to fix the problems that were there. And you feel appreciated. You feel loved by me. I feel loved by you. I don't want to speak for you. I shouldn't have said that. I'm going to say I feel appreciated and loved by you. If you
And
want to
you
say,
feel-
I feel so loved by you.
You said how you love her more now than ever. If I don't love you more tomorrow than I did today, then I'm not doing something right, because I'm
Yeah.
not growing.
Right.
The
Yeah.
more that I allow God in, the greater I can love, the more I die to self.
yeah,
It's all a choice. It's a choice. We all have to choose every day to be our best selves for our spouses, for each other, for God. You can't just not choose.
Yeah. Heaven is right here. Regardless of what we've been through, we still have things we can be joyful about.
yeah.
Let's do it together.
Let's
Amen.
do it.
Amen.
Hoorah.
Bobby, Katie, thank you so much for being here
Your
with
marriage
us.
is a blessing to the world.
It is.
Thank you.
Yes.
Your family is a blessing to the world. Ezekiel, Timothy,
Pray for us.
pray for us.
Pray for us.
And thank you for sticking with us for this time. And we hope that in some way that our conversations today have edified you in your life. If you want to leave a comment down below
Any
and
questions?
share any questions or thoughts on the topics that we've discussed today.
You can also message us privately if you have any questions.
absolutely.
If you're struggling in your marriage or anything. I mean, you worked as a diocese dude of marriage stuff.
I think that was my
your
exact
title.
job
It
title.
was. It was
Yeah,
weird.
diocese dude of marriage
It was
stuff.
weird.
I really want that title.
So you know some stuff, and
Okay, what
he's
she
really
means-
smart. He's very smart.
Okay.
So message him if you need help. Sorry.
No,
I don't know
it's
why I
awesome.
felt like I needed to do that, but just in
It's
case
okay.
someone needs
Yeah,
help.
absolutely. And no, we're not experts. This is a really hard thing to be an expert
Right.
on because people are complicated,
Yeah, there's no
and marriages
simple
are
situation.
made of people.
Every situation's different.
Exactly.
But we also have experienced some of that trauma, the death of a child. So if anybody out there is struggling for that and wants someone to talk to, wants even just somebody to talk to about it or vent on, it helps.
Absolutely.
Don't pretend it didn't happen. I mean, for us, it helps.
Yeah.
We talk to family
Talk
about
about
it. We
it.
talk about him. We have a creepy amount of pictures of him in our house. We
It's beautiful.
have his presence among us all the time. It never goes away. And it's not that we're joyful about it, because we're not. It's real. But we know that there are people out there who don't know how to grieve with that that crazy amount of heaviness. So
Yeah.
bring it. Let's
Yeah.
talk about it. We're here for you.
Thanks for offering
Bring
that.
it.
Of course.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for watching or listening, and hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you would like to be a part of what makes this show possible and the music that we make and all the different things we do in our ministry, feel free to check out our patron family, our patron community. Lots of cool rewards for joining that. It's nickandalina.com/patron. We need a jingle for that. I can
that
trigger
every
it. We talked about that at the last episode. Anyway, anyways, Jesus loves you. Never forget it. Have a great day or night, depending on what time you're. What's that over there? How do we end
How
this
do you turn
thing?
this thing off?
How do we turn this thing off?
We're struggling how
Or
to
just
hang
did
up
it by
first.
itself. I don't know.
Oh, our children are calling. We gotta go.
Bye.